this video we're going to look a little bit more at variables and what sort of data we put into variables. This is a fairly large subject in fact, and so this video is not going to try and cover all bases. What I'm going to do though is give you a pretty common scenario that you come across as a beginner, and let's try and work through what happens and see if we can understand it and how we can fix the problem. So let's get started. I'm going to go and start idle up. And we'll start a new program. Let's do a pretty common sort of scenario. So I'm going to create a variable called count, and I'm going to say that it's equal to 100. Now you'll notice I put 100 in quotes here. What that means, of course, is 100 in this case is a string. Now I'm going to do a calculation. So I'm going to say count equals count plus 10. Now I've left a space there, and that's up to you. You can have spaces or not as you prefer. If you find it more readable to do it like that, then by all means please do. It won't worry Python at all. But let's look at the code we've got. So we set the initial value to 100, and then in the next line we do a calculation where we're adding 10 to the value of count. That seems pretty straightforward. Let's go ahead then at the end of this and print what the answer is. Okay, let's see what that looks like. So we'll save that and run it. Call it count demo. And so to try and run it, I get this error. Now if you're starting out in Python, this is a pretty common one you're going to come across here, and it says can't convert int object to string implicitly. So what's it trying to tell us? What it's trying to say here is you start off with a string. Notice I had the quote string 100. So what it did was it set up count to be a variable of type string with a value of 100. Then in the next one I tried to do a calculation. So it said, hang on, you're trying to add an integer, which is 10, to something that I've stored in a variable as a string. And you can't do that. They've both got to be numbers if I'm going to do some sort of a calculation on it. So that's really what it's trying to explain with that message, can't convert int object to string implicitly. Okay, so there's a couple of ways I could fix this. First of all, what about if I didn't actually have count as a string in the first place? What if it really was a number? Let's try that and see if it fixes our problem. And it did. Because I didn't initially set up the variable as a string, but with a number, it went, that's fine. I'll make that a variable, a data type of number, in this case an integer, and then it was able to do the next line, which was a calculation. So that worked fine. But sometimes you're going to get to a situation where a variable is going to be a string even when you don't want it to be, and you need to convert it before you can actually work with it. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add an extra line, I'll just comment this, that converts a string to, in this case, an integer. So I'll put the name of the variable again, count, and I'll say it equals int, which is for integer, bracket, and then the name of the variable again in brackets. So the logic of this is, take what's in count, convert it to a number, and then put it back in. Let's see if that fixes the problem. Note carefully that we still have it originally as a string. So for this to work, that conversion on this line has to be successful. Let's see how we go. And there we go, 110. So you're going to find there are a number of different ways you can convert things that work pretty well. Let's try another really simple scenario. I'm actually going to comment that code so you can still see it while I do this next one. So I'll go up into Format, and I'll select Comment Out Region, which is all 3. And you can see that it just puts comments in front of everything, so we can still see it, but it's not going to run now when we press F5. In this scenario, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with count, and I say it equals 100. Notice this time I'm not putting it in quotes, so it's going to be a number. I'm still going ahead and performing my calculation as I did in the last one. So that should give us 110. And then I want to print the answer out. But what I'd like to do is something like this. So a string saying the answer is, and then the actual value. So I'd like it to say the answer is 110. Let's see how we go. So we'll press F5 and run that. And we get another type error. Can't convert int object this time to string implicitly. This is the reverse of the original problem. And hopefully you're starting to see what the problem is. This time count is definitely a number, it's an integer, and this works fine. But then when I use the print, I'm trying to combine a string with a number, and that's the problem. We can't do that. But I could use a variation of something that we've already learned. Remember in the earlier example, I converted a string to a number by doing int brackets count. I'm going to do the reverse now. I'm going to take count as a number, and I'm going to convert it to a string. And to do that, I'm going to go str brackets count. So this is going to take the value of count, which was a number, convert it to a string, and then add it to another string. Let's see if that works. The answer is 110. So the print statement was happy this time because both parts that we were trying to add together with a plus sign were strings. This was natively a string, so it was already in quotes. This bit was converted to a string before it was added to the first bit, and therefore it was happy. So you will find from time to time when doing your projects, you'll need to convert the type of a variable from one to another. It's a fairly common scenario in every programming language, but it can throw you off when you're first starting to learn about a new programming language. So I can only suggest you try a few things. Try printing messages out with combinations of numbers and variables that are numbers and variables that are strings, and get used to the idea of using these conversions between one data type and another. We've done it a few times, it'll become second nature. The giveaway, of course, is always that message starts with type error. That's always an indication that you're trying to put two different types of variables together that don't get along. And it should start to become really obvious when you look at your code after a bit of practice just where the problem is. Hope you found that useful, and we'll see you in the next video.